Hey, Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. It is Sunday, January 18th, couple hours before the first conference championship. The NFC Conference Championship will be taking place in Seattle, followed by the one in New England later today. I want to look at the history of the Seahawks and the Packers, which is the NFC Conference Championship game. Whoever wins this will represent the National Football Conference in the Super Bowl on February 1st. To me, this is an interesting matchup because just even long before I started studying gematria and numerology, I started to notice how certain teams had backdoor relationships with each other, and it seemed like the Packers and Seahawks were definitely one of those teams. The Seahawks had a quarterback for many years, Matt Hasselbeck, that was drafted in the sixth round, 187th pick overall by the Green Bay Packers. And when we look at these playoff scores, we can see why they're curious. On January 4th, 2004, the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers met in the playoffs for the very first time. The game went to overtime with a score of 27-27. I'm going to show you the highlight. This is an infamous clip. It was the Seattle Seahawks quarterback Matt Hasselbeck, who was drafted by the Green Bay Packers, who makes this quote and then this terrible play. So, for those of you who don't watch football, we'll watch this twice. I'll explain it clearly. We'll watch it the first time.
Short drop, quick throw, left side, intercepted. T right side, going down the right side into the end zone. It is out.
So, we'll watch that again. But what we see is the Seahawks quarterback in overtime says, "We want the ball and we're going to score." If you don't watch professional football, in overtime, the first team to score wins. The game is just over once a team scores. Or that's the way it was with the rules at that time. They've made some changes in the league since, but that's what it was when that play happened. So on the first possession where Matt Hasselbeck touched the ball, we'll see exactly what happens. He throws a pass that gets intercepted by the other team, the Green Bay Packers, Al Harris, who then runs it back for a touchdown and his team wins. So Matt Hasselbeck for the Seahawks is going to say, "We want the ball, we're going to score," and then he's going to make a horrible error and the other team's going to win. And this was an infamous moment for his career. And Truth Seeker, what I want to point out is how this league, if it's scripted and as fake as I'm saying, I want you to think more about this. Not very often do we hear what players say into a mic on the field. So hearing Matt Hasselbeck say, "We want the ball and we're going to score," is a rarity in itself. Usually the mics are turned off. You can't hear what the players are saying. And then for him to do this on the first play, it's why I say the NFL is much like the WWF, the fake wrestling society. And for everyone who gaffs at that, you should remember that the wrestling society, when it first came out, or these wrestling leagues, they maintained that they were completely real until their cover was blown too far. And in my opinion, the NFL's cover's blown too far. I mean, just look at what the refs do almost every week. The refs have decided the Detroit Green Bay game. They've decided Detroit versus Dallas game with the reverse of the pass interference. Had the Lions scored on that drive, it probably would have been game over, Lions win. Then next week, they made a controversial call against the Cowboys so that the Packers went on to win with a score that summed to 47 in the 47-year anniversary of the Ice Bowl. And that's just, it's like that every week with the NFL, and it's been like that for seasons. In the season after September 11th, it was Tom Brady who had a new rule invented in his name, the Tuck rule, that prevented the Raiders from going to the Super Bowl and instead sent the Patriots. And then they've built their legacy ever since. So it's just a bunch of legacies built on hoaxes and horrible calls, and somehow growing men and women, growing sport for women too, are just being fooled. And it's hard to believe because it just seems to be getting more blatant with each season. But anyhow, that pick six, look what it made the final score. It made the final score 33-27. 3 times 9 is 27. 3 times 11 is 33. So often we see these numbers paired together. Then they met again in the playoffs, January 12th, 2008, also in Green Bay, and they lost by a score of 42-20, summing to 62. Like the word Mason, the national championship game just had this sum in this final score. You know, these are commonly coded numbers. These are ritualistic numbers. And what I want you to see, Truth Seeker, is that these teams have met twice in the playoffs, both times at Green Bay. Both times the Packers have won with very curious scores. This time, what's different about today, it's January 18th, 2015, 4 years, now 7 years later. But it's the first time it's in Seattle. It's never been in Seattle before, so we will see what happens with Seattle. Now, in this highlight, the quarterback who was in focus was Matt Hasselbeck, who throws this pass that gets intercepted by Al Harris, who I want to point out is the first professional player. Well, maybe it was Ricky Williams. It was one of these two. They were the first two dudes with dreadlocks in the league. Now a common sight. But here, let's look deeper at this player, Matt Hasselbeck, who threw the pass. He is currently 39 years old, and he is currently playing for the Indianapolis Colts. In his career, he's played for the Green Bay Packers. Then he went to the Seattle Seahawks. He was Brett Favre's backup here. Then he came to the Seahawks. Then he went to the Titans, another team that seems to have a backdoor relationship with the Seahawks. Also think about how Seattle's quarterback Jake Locker, who played for the Huskies, went to the Titans. I think there's something going on here, Truth Seeker, collegiate and professional. And now he's currently on the Colts. And if you saw my earlier post on the NFL, I pointed out how there was a curiosity between Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson. For those of you who don't know, I broke down the stats of all 8 quarterbacks who made the playoffs this year, looked at their life numbers, jersey numbers, and found a bunch of interesting curiosities, especially that pertain to last week's games. Go back and watch that post if you haven't. I'll link it down in the comments. But anyway, out of that research, I noticed that Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson both have life numbers of 39. They were the only 2 of the 8 quarterbacks that had life numbers of 39. Again, Hasselbeck's currently 39 years old. And this year's Super Bowl is in Arizona. Only 2 states have a Pythagorean gematria of 39, Arizona and New York. And if you can recall, in the wake of 2001, the World Series was in Arizona. Also, True Seeker, this number 39 comes from the Old Testament. It is of 39 books. The final book of the Bible is Revelation, which is based on the Old Testament. Revelation sums to 49, like this year's Super Bowl, Super Bowl 49. So there's very much a connection between 39 and 49. If you add those 2 numbers together, you also get 88. And yeah, True Seeker, since week 3, if you're not aware, I pointed out that the Colts are going to be in the Super Bowl and likely win it. I picked the Detroit Lions to represent the NFC based on some other numerology. Obviously, that pick was wrong, but the Colts pick is still looking strong. If they lose today at New England, that's a different story. It doesn't, and also if they do lose today, Truth Seeker, I want you to realize that what we've documented over the course of the season still isn't a coincidence. And perhaps what we've picked up on is not exactly the Super Bowl picture, but somehow how the season is scripted and how tributes are given. That said, if the Colts don't win today, I will be really surprised just because there have been so many tributes to the Colts this season, which I've documented very well on my written blog and on this video blog. If you want to go to my blog and search for Indianapolis Colts Super Bowl 49, you will find several posts I've done documenting the curious numerology throughout the season. But yeah, there's definitely something bizarre here at work. It's numerology, it's players, it's team history. There's definitely a method to their madness. On ESPN this morning, this is what they're showing, how Pack can rebound. If you take the time to listen to what the people on the national news are saying, more and more people are moving towards the Packers are going to win. which is interesting. I mean, there's a possibility they could win today. I could also see the Packers winning. Rodgers wears the number 12, just like Andrew Luck, just like Tom Brady. Every quarterback remaining wears the number 12 right now, except for Russell Wilson, who wears the number 3. This picture is also interesting because it shows number 93 tackling Russell Wilson. 93 is the number of Thelema. Notice that 9 plus 3 is also 12. So there's lots of 12 focus right now. Also, Truth Seeker, just in case I am wrong about the Colts, just looking at other things, the Green Bay Packers, who have a shot at it, have currently won the World Championship 13 times. This predates the Super Bowl era. The Packers did win the very first 2 Super Bowls, but they've only won 2 more since. So they have 4 Super Bowls to date. But before the Super Bowl era, they won 9 other championships. So they have 13 total titles. If they won it this year, they would have 14 total titles, and they would have won their 14th in the 2014-15 season. So, you know, little numerology connections there. That is the difficulty in this Truth Seeker. There are a lot of different ways you can connect the numbers. But at the same time, that's not the reason to discount it. It just means you have to look deeper and look at the other narratives and what they're going for. Back in week 3, I had good reason to look at the number 44 because of the focus on 44 right now with the 44th president and everything else I document on my blog. That's the other connection in this research. I'm saying these sports championship games also seem to have much to do with world history and what's going on in the world right now. As for Green Bay, they play in Wisconsin. Only 2 states have a gematria of 44, Georgia and Wisconsin. So, in a way, the Packers also have this other connection to this number I've been looking at all season. As for the Seahawks, they've only won 1 championship. They won it last year. They're looking to be the first team to repeat in the Super Bowl since the Patriots. Only one team in the history of the league has ever won the championship 3 times in a row. That's the Packers. They won it in 29, 30, and 31 during the Great Depression. The Great Depression reached its peak in 33. With regards to 33, in the year 33, that's the year professional football first split into 2 separate conferences. And think about the Freemasons and duality. That's also the year they began the playoffs. The playoff system was established that year. So Packers, very historic team. In college football, we witnessed how Ohio State won this year. Ohio's the birthplace of football. What was interesting about college this year was it was the first year they had a playoff. So in a way, it was the first Super Bowl season for college football. And Ohio won, the Roots. If the Packers won this year, you would say, going back to the roots, the original winners of football. Also, another curiosity, I noticed that last week the Colts went into Denver against the Broncos as with this same 7.5 point spread, and the Colts securely beat the Broncos. If Green Bay securely beats Seattle today, remember this, Truth Seeker. I'm just documenting this to see if maybe, there's something telling in the spreads as well. All this is research as well, Truth Seeker. Remember, as much as I'm projecting and trying to educate, I'm also learning this at the same time, and I'm trying to learn it with you and show you, where I still have the questions as well. I never claim to say I have all the answers. I don't want you to ever walk away from these videos thinking that. Also, I watched this segment right here, Truth Seeker, and both of these men think the Packers are going to win today's game. So national media starting to move in the direction of Green Bay. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. That could just be to sway Vegas dollars. Maybe more people this morning are betting on Green Bay because of what they're hearing on TV. And last year that happened, and last year's Super Bowl was more profitable for Las Vegas than the 5 Super Bowls that came before that. Why? Because the Denver Broncos are a super popular team nationally. Peyton Manning has a big following. The national media was saying Denver was going to spank Seattle. And lo and behold, the other thing happened. Seattle spanked Denver, and Las Vegas made big money, more than the 5 Super Bowls before it combined. True Seeker, to date, the Packers and the Seahawks have played each other 17 times. It will be their 18th matchup today on January 18th. And this is the history. Green Bay is 10-7 against Seattle. The last two times Seattle has won, but both those games have been in Seattle. And on Monday, September 24th, the game ended with something called what that is now known as the Fail Mary. Notice that 9 plus 24 is 33. It had a curious date. It was Monday Night Football. The acronym for MNF is 13 plus 14 plus 6 equals 33. Monday Night Football already has this 33 connection. And that play, or that game, ended with a play that caused a controversy, talk of a possible rule change. So perhaps we'll get a review of that. Maybe there'll be some crazy play in today's game that gives us flashbacks to the Fail Mary. Keep that in mind. And yeah, that's pretty much the extent of it, Truth Seeker. Just for memory's sake, let's watch this. We want the ball, and we're going to score one more time. It's one of my favorite Seahawk highlights of all time.
Short drop, quick throw, left side, intercepted. To the right side, going down the right side into the end zone. It is out.
Who knows? Maybe Richard Sherman will do a play like that to win it for the Seahawks. But remember, Matt Hasselbeck was drafted by the Packers. Perhaps when he said that, he was speaking about the Packers. Maybe he was working for the Packers anyway in a Seahawks uniform. 187th pick in the police code, that's homicide. All right, Truth Seeker, until next time.